is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Jay Fiset. His website is mastermindmillions.com. He's in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which I have to tell you is about 1,000 miles straight north of Phoenix, because I don't know if you know this, but Phoenix, 10% of the homes are owned by Canadians. And right now it's the end of September. Now it's October. And this is when all the snowbirds, so 400,000 snowbirds will come down here for the fall, and they'll all leave and be back home by April. And I can't tell you in the 30 years of being a dentist how many snowbirds said that drive from Calgary down through Montana and Utah and around the Grand, they say that. A lot of people say, well, why don't you just buy an extra car and leave it in Phoenix? They're like, are you kidding me? That's the coolest damn drive on the world. And if you're a retired senior citizen, you got the time. But anyway, Jay Fiset is a best-selling author, student of human nature, avid outdoorsman at 5-star hotels, speaks fluent smartass, can see and reflect your life mission in 5 minutes flat, loves having 2 sons so he can play with their toys, still fantasizes about his wife after 25 years, loves ideas but loves results even more, can simultaneously laugh and cry for different reasons at the same time, has never been starstruck but did not get a chance to meet Martin Luther King, and there would have been teenage girls screaming if I had. I am dedicated to instigating a global movement of conscious creators and supporting people to organize their life and resources around their passions and gifts. And thank you so much for coming on the show, because that is one thing you see around the world differently with boomers than with millennials. I mean, the boomers in, the baby boomers in Japan, they graduated from college, got a job at Toyota or Honda or Mitsubishi and stayed there for 40 years and retired at 65. And now you read these companies, great companies like Facebook and Google and eBay, their average millennial only stays with them 2 years because they feel like they're just trading time for money, even though they're making bank. So talk about what is Conscious Creators and what is it that you do with creating mastermind groups and support for best practices and growth practice.
You bet. Wow. Well, first of all, Howard, thank you so much for having me. I deeply appreciate it. By the way, I was surprised to know that it's only 10% of Phoenix is owned by Canadians, because it's like 100% of my friends all own homes there. It's quite astounding. And it's a beautiful spot. And you guys, just for perspective, if you think we're crazy in terms of the cold, is that we actually live exactly parallel but diametrically opposite lives, in that you guys have 4 months a year you can't go outside because it's hot. We have 4 months a year we can't go outside because it's cold. But other than that, same. So that's kind of funny. This idea of our mission and our purpose and all of those pieces is that I've spent 30 years in the personal development industry. And most of that really designed to trying to get people, whether they're millennials, whether they're boomers, all of those pieces, to ask bigger questions than just how much am I going to make? Is this job going to be secure? All those pieces. Is that if we can serve and support, and this really does go across the age profiles. What's most important to me? How am I going to leverage my influence? How am I going to leverage my income? How am I going to make one of the most significant differences that I'm here to make? And one of the tools of many that we serve and support is this idea of mastermind groups, of bringing together peers to quite literally bend time, to create in days, weeks, and months what might have been months, years, or never. And one of the most fantastic masterminds in the universe to run is the same industry but different geographic area. And this is one of the reasons why I was excited to come on this podcast and to talk to dentists, because one of the gentlemen who years ago taught me about masterminds he owned a dental lab, he and his dad. Actually, I think they owned 3 dental labs. And part and parcel of what he did and how he started was really this idea of, how do I bring together a group of people, and in this case it was dentists, how do I bring them together to learn best practices, to really scale their business? And that became the seed of much of what has become the Mastermind to Millions brand these days. And it just makes a monumental difference when we can accelerate our learning with a team of people where we're not worried about competition. We're really worried about how do we do this better for ourselves, for our staff, for our clients, and for the industry.
Wow, that was a mouthful. But you've got a bigger problem because, when we came out of school 30 years ago, we didn't come out with $350,000 of student loans. These dentists that you're talking to right now, she's driving to work right now, and she's working for some guy because she's got $350,000 of student loans. How does her journey start differently than you and me? Because when you and I came out of school, we didn't have a house payment with no house.
I'm sorry for laughing, but I almost did have a house payment with no house, but that wasn't necessarily just from school. But on a serious note, I do think it's more difficult for people today. There is no question about it in terms of what, first and foremost, the competition, the debt, all of those pieces. But the idea to me is that we've got to figure out how we can scale quickly and how we can learn quickly and how we do not go down the route of the traditional job. And, my standard around this would be if I was sitting under, a mountain of debt, $300,000 plus or minus, my first task would be to figure out what could accelerate me, what could differentiate me. How am I going to actually learn the business of dentistry? Because, this is the big crime. And this is one of the reasons why, by the way, I loved your site, Dental Town. I was looking at the amount of marketing training, and you've got some pretty significant programs in there. But the key piece from my perspective is that we've got to tell a fundamental truth, which is this, is that the $350,000 in debt is not going to be tackled most likely just by going to work for another dentist. The truth of the matter is that we've got to figure out what it actually takes to master the business of dentistry, to master the business of customer service, to master client acquisition and retention, to master how do I accomplish, and this is one of the things I admire the millennials about. They can, you and I were having that conversation of 2 years and they're out. But how do we master the fundamental pieces that move the needle to pay off the debt quickly, to position ourselves as experts in a specific arena, to create raving fans and clients that are coming back, they are not going anywhere else. And to me, that's where the mastermind groups that we have run in the past, and by the way, we've done it for automotive industries, we've done it for churches, we've done it for dentists, we've done it for chiropractors, we've done it in the spiritual domain. There's an arena where we haven't done it. But the consistent feedback that we get is it helps me to think differently. It helps me to approach the challenges in a more resourceful way. Because when a mastermind is done really well, what happens is that new dentist gets access to network, resources, wisdom, and experience that it might have taken them 10 years of working in somebody's practice to accumulate. But that could be accomplished in 6 months, 9 months, or a year to really get out from under the debt and begin to create what it is that they want. So that would be my first piece, is use the wisdom and experience of other people to accelerate that process. Do not just go for a traditional job. That's just too damn painful, expensive, and time consuming.
Let me just clarify one thing you said that might have flown over everyone's head. I agree. If you're going to use other people's money, you could have got out of high school and got a job for $15 an hour and worked for 10 years and gone to dental school in cash. But you decided to use other people's money, student loan debt, because when you got out of high school, you're worth $10 an hour, and then go to dental school and borrow money because when you graduate, you're worth, $100 an hour. But you can't use $300,000 of other people's money and then not continue using other people's money to buy your own business, because what you said with your student loan debt so high, you can't really pay it back being an employee, especially since when the difference between dentists and these other groups you talk about, auto, churches, they don't, when you look at a pastor who starts a new church, his personal spending is very different than a doctor. If you're a dentist, a physician, a lawyer, you say, well, I'm a lawyer. I just graduated from college. I need to drive a BMW, and I'm not going to buy a 1,200 square foot home. I'm going to buy a $350,000 home, and I'm not going to go on vacation camping at the lake in a tent. I'm a physician. I'm going to go take a cruise, and so when they go work as an employee, they're eating out 19 out of 30 meals. So even if they get paid $150,000, they're consuming it all. So they'll be on the road to take 20 years to pay off that student loan debt. So are you saying if you reach a certain level of debt, you got to go all the way and go spend another $750,000 and buy a dental office and be an owner because you can't make 150 and pay that debt off. You need to learn how to make 250.
Well, so I don't think it's as cut and dry as that, Howard. But I think that the theme that you're communicating is sound. And the honest to God truth is that if you've ever played, did you ever play that game Cash Flow by
Yes.
Mr. Yes, exactly. And it was like, if you've ever played that game, it is so perfect because whoever draws the doctor, they always go like, oh, because it's almost impossible to get out of the rat race and become financially free as the doctor. The expenses are just too damn high, even though the earnings are fantastic. So to me, first and foremost, I'm a huge fan of entrepreneurship. Absolutely huge fan of entrepreneurship. I'm also very clear that it is not necessarily for everyone. But that also doesn't mean that you couldn't position yourself to own equity in a practice. It doesn't mean that you couldn't invest some of your resources into that process. It doesn't mean you couldn't dedicate yourself to learn how to do it so that when the time was right, you did it wisely. So from my perspective, it's like $300,000 is a good chunk of debt. But it's going to be slow to pay off at $100 an hour. It's going to be slow to pay off at $100 an hour. So I just want to give you an example. So there's a woman from Los Angeles was at our last event, Mastermind to Millions Live, and she has a beautiful dental practice just getting up and running. Her sister has just joined her, and she's operating just, I'm going to say, a couple $100,000 shy of $1 million for the practice. And what's interesting for her is that she has noticed that there is a gap of support specifically for women dentists. Is that most of the leadership in the dentist arena is male. Most of the training is led by men. All of those pieces. So she's actually building a community and a mastermind group around women dentists who want to scale their business and are doing exactly what I had suggested earlier. Now, here's the irony to this. You guys have an incredibly expensive investment in getting the equipment, the tools, the processes, that's expensive. And what I know in terms of dollars and cents is that the mastermind that we helped position and structure in that domain is going to add as much profit to her business as her whole entire other business. Now, the sales are nowhere near as high, but the margins are way better. So to me, this is just one way of serving and supporting. This is one way of getting additional access. This is just one more revenue stream that I really believe that if you are a doctor, if you're in that position, that you've got to start thinking about, and how else can I serve? And what else is in alignment with my mission? And what else inspires me and excites me? And in the entrepreneurial domain, there's 12 billion choices.
So what is a mastermind group, and how does one of my homies listening to you right now start a mastermind group or get into this? Because I agree, when you get out of school and you're young, a mentor is everything. Yes. I mean, to come out of school and have a mentor, my God, what a gift. And if you look at entrepreneur and business, for the last 30,000 years, how did you learn how to put on horseshoes? How did you learn to make horse and buggies? It was all apprenticeship with a mentor. Now they come out of a school, they're agnostic to their school, and they don't have a mentor. So how do they find a mentor? How do they find one of these mastermind groups that's got these women dentists in it, and how does that all work?
To me, a whole bunch of things. First and foremost, I'm going to recommend a book. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie, and it's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. For those of you who haven't read it, I'll give you the 30-second synopsis. First and foremost, I obviously did not come up with the word mastermind. Napoleon Hill came up with the word mastermind when he was charged by Andrew Carnegie to go and find out what was different about people that were truly successful and moving and shaking and making monumental difference in the world with the normal, everyday, average Joe. And he wrote an entire book about it, but one of the most important components that he discovered was that every single one of the people who was really moving and shaking in the world, every single one of them had a community, a tribe, a group of people that they could actually come to and ask questions. And think of it like mentoring on speed, Howard, because instead of it just being one person, it's actually an entire group of people, all with different specialized skills and abilities to assist in a particular arena or domain. So short version, if you want to know what a mastermind group is, top of the list, go read Think and Grow Rich. It'll change how you think about mentorship. It'll change how you think about community. It'll change how you think about tribe. So that would be number one for me. Number two, in terms of the core of your question of how do we find these, here's what, and I know you'd said that many of the listeners here are sort of on the younger side of the dental practice. But honest to God, my request is that if you think that you could scale your business better, if you could provide more support, if you could accelerate what it means to master the running of a practice, to master the acquisition of a client, to master creating raving fans, if you could accelerate that through a mastermind, the honest to God truth is this: for crying out loud, start one. By the way, if you are somebody who's been at it for a while, I mean, in large part, Dentaltown and the community that you have created here is a form of access to training, mastermind, community, resources, all of those pieces. So from my perspective, I teach people how to position, launch, and lead their own masterminds. And the reason I do that instead of referring people to a whole bunch of other masterminds is that when we get active about creating the community, what transpires is that we are more committed to the process. And if anyone is sitting there and is like, well, how the hell would you do that? Well, if you just go to that website that Howard had talked about at the beginning, mastermindcommunities.com, there's a complimentary 52-page manual that you can just download, and it gives you all of it's the actual same manual that I used to create mastermind groups for my personal development company that I literally gave to my internal team. And in fact, when you see it, it will look kind of funny because it is aimed for very specific content. But we did it that way so that people can see this is a real tool. This isn't some hypothetical. So go get that manual. Go read that book.
What's your website? Mastermindcommunities.com?
No, Mastermind to Millions.
I thought the second time you said, that's what I thought it was. So mastermindtomillions.com. I want to say something. All leaders are readers. The first thing that came out of your mouth is go buy a damn book and read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And you were smart enough of your history to know that he was funded by Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie is one of the people, everybody knows who Rockefeller was, but John D. Rockefeller was the richest man that ever lived in America. Andrew Carnegie was number two. In fact, his net worth in just 2007 dollars was $310 billion, whereas Bill Gates is more like 80. But the thing that and he made his money in steel, and then that company went on to be U.S. Steel. But what I think is so amazing about him, not only did John D. and Andrew Carnegie give away their money, but Andrew Carnegie took his millions and built 2,509 libraries between 1883 and 1929, and basically that was how many counties there were. He thought to himself, what's the best gift I could give America? And there were 2,509 counties, and he built a library in every one, and he tried to get the state. He tried to build it for the county and says, I don't want this. It's not the Andrew. Him and Rockefeller didn't put their name on anything. Gosh darn, Stanford and Hopkins and a lot of those guys would put their name on there, but these guys thought that you don't want credit on earth, you want credit from your maker. And John D. Rockefeller built Chicago University, and no one even knows that. And they have more Nobel Prizes than any university on earth, and their number one category is in economics. And he said, this isn't going to be a religious college. The chapel was small. I'm not putting my name on it. But that was the first university on earth that had zero budget and they could buy anything they wanted. I just think Andrew Carnegie, man, what a great man. What a great legend. And he was. Well, and I mean, I'm going to go on a rant for a moment. But so, number one, thank you for sharing that, because I didn't know that he had built. I did not know that he had built the university. I do know that they were unbelievable philanthropists, and it never ceases to amaze me how much they gave and built. Like, it was pretty freaking astounding. But each of them had this incredible community of people around them. And, you may or may, are you familiar? I imagine you are, Howard, given that history lesson. The Illustrious Vagabonds. No,
you don't know this one? This is cool. So, again, all human beings of greatness are surrounded by a tribe. So the Illustrious Vagabonds, between 1914 and 1928, every single summer, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, Harding, President Harding, and a variety of other select people, every summer they would go on this summer road trip, which was quite literally a summer road trip and mastermind that they called the Illustrious Vagabonds. And there's actually a very cool story, true or not. I'm sure it's much manipulated, but they're driving through the wilderness because back then there weren't, we didn't have interstates and those sorts of things, and they get stuck. And a farmer comes up with his horses and pulls these big cars out, and and apparently one of them, Henry Ford, goes up and shakes the guy's hand and says, "Thank you so much, because I really appreciate this, because, I'm Henry Ford and I built that car that you just pulled out." And he goes, "Nice." And then Thomas Edison came up and introduced himself and made some reference to whatever he had, something that Thomas Edison had created. Then Harvey Firestone came up and said, "And the cars you just pulled out, I build wheels on that. I'm Harvey Firestone." And then President Harding comes up and says, "I don't suppose you know who I am." And the farmer says, "Well, if you're a liar like all the rest of those schools, I imagine you're going to tell me you're Santa Claus."
That is awesome.
True or not, they did have this mastermind, and that mastermind, by the way, is often credited with some of the largest and most strategic thinking, including the interstate system, including how transportation unfolded across the entire U.S., including the distribution of electricity. Like, those were the kind of things that transpired. And if you look, every single person that has created something powerful and meaningful had this tribe and community around them. So my invitation, and Mastermind to Millions, is a double entendre of, I want millions of people to have the support and the community and the wisdom and the experience around them that is becoming less and less personal. And I also want people who are courageous enough to lead masterminds to abundantly be rewarded. And in this idea, the creation of a mastermind, any dentist, you have a position of influence. You have a tribe. You have families who rely on you. You have you have other doctors. You have lawyers. You have accountants. You have all those sorts of things. Every single one of you could create a powerful mastermind that would scale your business and serve and support your tribe and community in more meaningful manners. And that would be my invitation. If I was sitting under debt and I was trying to figure out how to do this faster, it would be, let's get a group of people together that can actually scale handling this, and in a brilliant and meaningful manner.
Do you have a dental one going on, or would they set one up in their own town, or do you have one?
So I don't have one to go on. I teach people how to do it. That's my wheelhouse. I do not have one to invite people to. However, if you were interested in figuring out how to do, how to run a mastermind, one of the things that we have is something called the Launch Your Mastermind Bootcamp. So there's all the tools, the resources, the contracts, the structures, the processes that we could support people with. We also have a mastermind, a business mastermind, which is called that would give people a framework of what to do. But my wheelhouse is really training the people who are willing to lead, the people who are willing to create the groups, the people who are willing to mentor and invite the tribe to put a system, a process together that is both meaningful, that they can monetize, and that complements their business.
On Dental Town, everybody is allowed to start one thread that's commercial in nature. So let's say you're a dentist and you speak around the world on sleep apnea. You can't spam all the deals, but you could go to practice management, start a practice management thread and say, "I'm Jay Fiset. Howard had me on a podcast. I want to talk about how that your wheelhouse is to create these mastermind to million groups." And I think that would be neat, because what I'm trying to do as a leader, I'm trying to get these young kids. I feel strongly that 30 years ago, you could come out of dental school and make 5 big mistakes out of the group. You could go to an overcrowded area. You could do so many things wrong and still make bank. But today, when dental fees due to insurance companies are 42% lower than they were 30 years ago. So imagine that. So 30 years ago, I got $1,000 for a crown. Today, I get $600. 30 years ago, I got $1,000 for a root canal. Today, I get $600. So if you're coming out with 42% lower fees, they've opened up 7 dental schools. I mean, when I came to Phoenix, they didn't have any dental schools or fluoride in the water. Now they have fluoride in the water and 2 dental schools, and these are big dental schools, cranking out 100 a year. So I want them to come out of the group and find a mentor, and starting a mastermind group, that would be so cool. Back to your illustrious vagabonds. I think it's so ironic they call themselves vagabond, because the definition of vagabond is a person who wanders from place to place without a home or a job. And then he said on his on that deal, said if the second word they would have used is gypsy. I wonder why they call themselves illustrious vagabonds. People without a home or a job, when these were some of the richest, most successful industrial captains of our time.
I think from the research that I've done, because I do think it's quite entertaining and cool. The research I did, I think that they all had a pretty good sense of humor about themselves and about the world and about their sort of role in it. And I think that the paradox of illustrious and vagabonds and what they were creating and how they were actually shaping not just North America, but the world, I don't think was lost upon them. I really don't. I think they were pretty sharp characters. Yeah, just another little interesting piece is that Benjamin Franklin actually was a very early proponent, creator, and participator in a mastermind that he called the junta. And he actually would hand select in the communities in which he was around a couple of tradesmen, a couple of thinkers, a couple of educators, and they would come and they would meet on a weekly basis where they would have a drink. Somebody would report on something they had read, and they would have a fervent debate about whatever the topic of the day happened to be. And that actually turned into and evolved into the American Philosophical Association that is all over all over the United States. So the thing that surprises me, Howard, is, I actually think that we're entering into the golden age of masterminds. And I think we're entering into the golden age of masterminds because it's easier now to find our tribe. It's easier now to communicate with people using technology like what we're doing right now, which is pretty astounding. It's easier to, sort of plant our flag as the leader of a particular community and have people find us. But it still sort of surprises me that we have people who are, and by the way, I'm so sorry, I have a new puppy and he's a little crazy. His name is Lou, and he's a Hungarian Vizsla, and we just call him crazy. But we have all of this access that we still lean a little too much, or perhaps a lot too much, to our independence. And it's like, I'm going to figure it alone. I'm going to do it my own way. I'm going to, reinvent the wheel because my wheel will be rounder, or I'm going to reinvent fire because my fire will be hotter. And it's like, for crying out loud, the path has been blazed. The wheels are there. Let's just build community and greater access to wisdom, experience, network, and resources, and let's knock it out of the park. Quit wasting time spinning around the same old. If the most intelligent and wisest captains of industry used it, and everywhere we look, Roosevelt had the tennis cabinet, by the way, which was nothing more than a large mastermind group. In fact, the United States of America, by the way, the founding fathers that actually crafted the United States was fundamentally a mastermind. It was 14 guys. Anyway, it still shocks me how people want to do it on their own. And I guess this would be part and parcel of my invitation to anyone listening, particularly if you're relatively new, particularly if you're coming into a competitive environment. For crying out loud, you don't have the time. If you got that kind of debt, you don't have the money. And if the plan is a 15-year plan, that's not going to be so inspiring to chip away at that. So bring together the best and accelerate that process. Because what we call is we bend time. And we can actually bend time, and we do it every day in masterminds.
We were talking about the name being vagabonds. A guy travels from place to place without a home or a job, and their backup name was Gypsy. Same thing. I think you said they didn't take themselves serious. That they were they didn't take themselves serious. When you ask anybody, when you're flying on an airplane, turn to the person next to you and say, "How would you describe a lawyer?" And then say, just in 2 words, how would you describe a physician? How would you describe a dentist? Dude, humble never comes up ever. Know-it-all, arrogant, thinks are all that. And I have been watching successful dentists come out of the gate and who crushes it. And I always say that the top 2 things is they're humble and they're hungry. They're humble. They're going to listen to their staff, their patients, their customers. They're going to devour CE. That's why I'm doing this free podcast, because my God, I think it's so cool that on your hour commute to work, you're hungry enough to listen to each show. What you're telling me on the emails, and email me howard@dentaltown.com and tell me, who are you? How old are you? It always blows my mind. It's about 25% are still in dental school, which I think is so damn cool that they're in dental school and they're already realizing that someday they're going to have to dive in the deep end of that swimming pool. And they know while they're sitting there in class learning calculus and trig and geometry that none of that stuff is going to make it. They're in labs right now. Listen to this, where they have to make a crown or a denture or a partial, and they know the minute they get out of school, they're going to send that to a lab. And so they're already starting to be humble and listen to these guests I bring on the show, like yourself. And then they're hungry. I mean, they take the ones that take 100 hours of CE a year always crushed it. That's why we do a daily show. They listen to this every day on the day to work. I mean, we've done 950 shows. I mean, you do 950 shows, you're going to know what to do. So is this, if you say your wheelhouse is helping one of my listeners set up the Mastermind group, what does that cost? How long does that take? What are other people's success? I mean, has anybody made money on this?
Oh, substantially. So let me describe that.
Well, this is Dentistry Uncensored, so get to the nitty gritty. Get to the money, cost, revenue, all that stuff.
Okay, those are, by the way, my favorite conversations, because particularly in the online marketing world, there is a fair amount of, shall we call it, puffery and distraction. So on a serious note, though, two parts to this question that I want to answer. I spoke just 2 days ago at an event in San Diego called the New Media Summit. And the New Media Summit was a very interesting event. One was people who were trying to get ready to get their podcasts up and running, and other people who were already quite successful podcasters, and they would do meetings for bookings and guests and all those fun, wonderful things. And it never ceased to amaze me as I was doing more and more work with the podcasters of what I'm going to call the latent demand. And sometimes the untapped influence, which, Howard, I would wager you have in spades, given what we're talking about here. Like, you've really got that nailed. So one of the key pieces that I want you to consider as I answer this question is that, honestly, Howard, you should probably be running a mastermind. You are already a mentor. You're already a man of influence. You're already contributing to this community in powerful and amazing ways. But there's a whole bunch of other people who should do. So here's how we go about the process. There are two ways in which people can actually dive fully into the process of running a mastermind. And the first of which is an event that I quite literally just finished, but it's coming back to Phoenix, by the way, June 1, 2, and 3 in 2018, and that's called Mastermind to Millions Live. And it's basically a 3-day training on how to position, how to launch, and how to lead a mastermind.
Do you already pick the hotel, the conference space? Do you have all that?
We're at the Embassy Suite.
We have an annual meeting every year where, these people talk to each other all day long on Dental Town, and all they know is your name is Smiley Face. They might know you're from Canada. They don't know who you are. And they want to meet in the flesh. Well, we have that annual meeting every year. It was in Las Vegas every year for the last 15 years. And since I'm a selfish bastard and now have grandchildren who want to go to Disney World, we're moving it from drinking and gambling in Vegas to Mickey Mouse in Orlando. That'll be the next 2 Aprils. But that department has nothing to do in between those deals. So they put up little regional meetings, and they put them up here. But if you had your girl email me, howard@dentaltown.com, they might be able to help you with some co-marketing or help you with getting some dentists there, what you're talking about. Because I'm sure some of these listeners hearing you that it's going to be in Phoenix next June will be wondering if anything comes of that. And then when you start that post on Dental Town, you can say it's going to be there. But there's 3,800 dentists just in Phoenix. And it's
seriously,
38.
That's astounding.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get some dentists in there because, like I say, a big passion of mine is to get these kids mentors because they can't come out of school deaf, dumb, and blind like I did. They need to, their first 4 or 5 moves need to be at least a C grade or higher. They can't come out of school and their first 5 decisions be D's and F's. They need mentors.
There's no question about
Okay,
that.
so
And that
June
is
1, 2, and 3, you're going to have a mastermind group at the Embassy Suites by the airport in Phoenix.
I assume that I don't know which one is which, but apparently it's a nice spot. So yes, there's that. The next piece is this: is that if they want some complementary resources, just to sort of feel the thing out, they can certainly go to mastermindtomillions.com. They'll get a manual, and there's a sort of one-time opportunity to do something called Mastermind Essentials, which is just a high level. It's a high level training about the 6 pillars of running a mastermind, which I'll share with you guys, and then I'll tell you how we do the rest of it. Is that they've got to have these 6 pillars in place. If these 6 pillars aren't in place, the truth is the mastermind can't work. And the first of which is perfect positioning. What is the promise of this mastermind? So is it a mastermind for other dentists? Is it a mastermind for business scaling? Is it a mastermind for driving sales? Is it a mastermind within the organization that actually helps the organization run more efficiently? And all of those are masterminds that we've helped set up in those industries. So perfect positioning. Then the next is this idea of personal evolution, of we've got to be the leader that people want to follow, or we've got to be humble enough to bring together a group of people that we learn with and from, that we are not sort of the guru, taking on that role, because it gets in the way of true evolution of a mastermind. The third is fill your mastermind with ease, how to put people in the chairs, the right people in the chairs to have this synergistic experience. And those 3 modules are all about launching a mastermind. And then there's 3 that are important about keeping it running, which the first of which is commitment. Because it's easy to say yes to something and then have the commitment fall. So how to get commitment, how to reset commitment, and how to maintain commitment, because that is one of these processes. Then there's facilitating skills. How do we handle the small group management process? Because masterminds are filled with these crazy things called people, which takes some management. And then a little bit of compelling content. What is the educational processes that are not going to turn it into group coaching or training, but educational processes that move the group along with the promise of the group? And that, by the way, might be to build a 7-figure dental practice. That would be a hell of a piece. Or it could be how to build a practice on your terms that pays off your debt in 5 years or less. Or it could be you figure out what the promise of the mastermind is. So we teach people all of those pieces, and frankly, you can get the big picture overview. I think it's for as little as like $97, so cheap. But if you want the full comprehensive training, then we have this Launch Your Mastermind 90-day boot camp, and that is a $2,000 very comprehensive course, complete with the contracts, the applications, the positioning worksheets, all those sorts of things, and a bunch of coaching for you to get really clear about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Like the woman in Los Angeles who's launching the women dentists practice growing group. Now, $2,000, whatever. Small amount of money for an incredible skill. But let's talk about what people make out of these sorts of things. So I have a friend and a client. His name is Jay Rook. His mastermind, and just to be clear about this, we teach a process about how to fill a mastermind, which is like a little mini mastermind piece. Our sort of code name for it is Wine, Conversations, and Cash, because we hand select people we want to build relationships with, drink some wine, have some meaningful conversations that we step you through, and then if they're a fit for the mastermind, then we talk to them further. So Jay went from fundamentally a standing start in the mastermind world to 9 months later, he has about $110,000 in sales and virtually no costs. Please hear that. That's a really important part if you're running a practice. And he runs simply 2 small groups of entrepreneurs who are interested in both building a life and scaling a business. So that's one example. I'm thinking of another dear friend of mine who runs a mastermind that is aimed at women specifically. And hers is more of a chapter 2 of a woman's life. So kids are gone, reinventing self, all of those pieces. And Sandra runs 2 mastermind groups, generally about 7 people each. Those people are in for $7,000 plus or minus. So she's at $50,000 per mastermind. And again, she's got a retreat in there, so there's a little bit of cost, but highly, highly profitable. So here's the key piece to this, is that depending on the positioning and the promise of the mastermind, you could do something for as little as $97 a month. You could do something like, I have a program that I charge $100,000 a year for, and that is the 7-figure business breakthrough. It's aimed at, generally speaking, coaches and entrepreneurs who are doing 300 to 600 that have hit that plateau. And I just hold their hand all the way past 7 figures. Now, interesting thing on mine, I guarantee it. You either break 7 figures or you have your money back. Super simple. So it really depends on the promise. But the honest God truth is, I don't think that any person of influence, meaning that if you have a dental practice, if you have people who are counting on you, if you have a community around you, if you've been doing something right within your practice, that should add six figures to the bottom line. I have a chiropractor in the midst of doing it right now. I think that he's just a hair under 100 right now, but he's pretty darn new. A year of work around this, it's six figures to your bottom line.
How many dentist mastermind groups do you have right now?
Only one.
And that's that woman dentist?
Yes.
Do you share her name, or is she below the radar?
I don't have her agreement to do so. So that's one of those pieces I just can't say. I would love to get it, and I'll post it in Dental Town, but I don't want to do something that is
you should have her
untoward.
and have her email me. But I'll tell you what, there are some people who took mastermind groups. It was their whole key to success. There's one in Arizona, that Joe Polish guy. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, Polish, yes, and he was a carpet cleaner for Christ's sake, and now makes like mid seven figures running mastermind groups.
Yeah, and I mean, and I've met him and I've talked to him, and I mean, he has people that come there. What is it, Abdul, the singer Abdullah, who sings Paul Abdul. I mean, so this can be a business bigger than owning a large group practice.
Oh, hell yes. And just to be clear about this is that when he started the masterminds were aimed at carpet cleaners trying to scale their business and learn best practices from one another. That's how he started. Now, it has grown into something far, far, far more significant than that. But the truth of the matter is this, is that and here's where I think the big opportunity is for people who are in the dental realm, is that you spend a significant number of years and a hell of a lot of money to become a qualified doctor to take care of people, yahoo. But that doesn't scratch the surface of what it means to run a business, what it means to actually acquire a client, what it means to read a P&L sheet properly, what it means to position marketing, what it means to communicate deeply so that we get a yes to that work. Like that's where this game is won or lost. And that is where I think any one of you who has some experience and some skill can bring tremendous value to the tribe and to the community of doctors. Because honest to goodness, with margins getting tighter, with more competition entering the fray, we've got to get smarter at the actual business of dentistry, not just the technical skills.
I want to say Mastermind. I want to say a couple of other things about that. What I did 30 years ago when I got out of school, which would be called guerrilla marketing before anybody ever said guerrilla marketing, is I went, I moved out to Ahwatukee. It's Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix is a weird deal, but it has a park that goes from 48th Street to 51st Avenue. It's 100 blocks long. Phoenix is the largest state capital of any of the 50 states. So the city of Phoenix has 1.4 million. It's the largest state capital. But this little sliver behind this mountain park, between the mountain park, it's the largest city park in all of America. I mean, it's like several times bigger than Central Park in Manhattan. It's the largest park, but there's just a little sliver of Phoenix between this mountain park, South Mountain Park, and the Indian Reservation, where there's just 80,000 people down here. And it's technically Phoenix, but everybody down here calls it Ahwatukee because it was called Ahwatukee before Phoenix annexed it. But anyway, long story short, when I opened up my practice, I went door to door on Saturday and Sunday and knocked on every single door and shook their hand like I was running for mayor, the city council, and probably 2 out of 3 people thought that, well, that's kind of weird, strange, just solicitor at my door. 1 out of 3 would actually stand there and pull back their mouth and show me their broken tooth, and I'd pull out my gloves, and I had a flashlight and a mirror, and then I had my in my backpack, I had my scheduling, which had no patients in it until the end of the time. And I pull out my schedule and I say, well, Jay Fiset, when do you want to come in? I mean, I have an opening 24 hours a day until the end of time. Does any of that work for you? And I would not stop Saturday night or Sunday night until the next week, Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Every new patient had an hour and a half to come in with me and Jan and do that. I mean, it was just hustling. But kind of another...
I got to stop you. Whoa. So I don't think that's hustling. Because I have a little rub with what I think some people call the hustle. That was You were building relationships and you were being proactive enough to go to somebody's home to actually put yourself out there to build the foundation of a relationship. Now you were working hard, make no mistake about it. But there's a difference between what I think the busy work of what most people call hustle and the strategy and the connection and the relationships that you build that filled your practice. Those are two different things, brother.
Yeah, but I want to tell you another thing I did. I mean, you said running relations. It was my old man's advice. He said, Howie, get out there. You're running for mayor. You're a 25-year-old dentist. You just get out there and run for mayor. But the other thing I did, which is kind of the mastermind, and I did it back then, and I even do it now. When I got my first computer and I got Microsoft Outlook and everything, I entered the name and business of every single doctor, physician, chiropractor, pharmacist, the lady who owns the workout place, what is that one workout place, the CrossFit, the gym. Across the street from me is Greico's auto mechanic. I invited every single one of those people to my house for dinner. Do you want to go to a restaurant? I prefer you come to my house. And that was the mastermind group, because when I was 25 and these 50-year-old physicians would come to my house for dinner, he sat down and told me the story about Awatuki and how it works and this and that. And I did it with psychologists and psychiatrists. And those psychologists come to the house, and by the end of dinner, they'd say, well, I actually have patients that have told me that they need to go to the dentist, but they can't because they're too afraid. And then I said, well, last night I had the pharmacist over, Brad, and his wife, and what medications do you think? And I mean, it was always your network equals your net worth. And there are kids that go to a town, and the dentist will work there 30 years and retire, and half the town didn't even know he ever lived. And yes. So it's mastermind, getting with people, going through your journey, sharing, and being humble enough to not walk out of law school and say, I just graduated from Harvard Law School. I know everything known to man. That kid is going nowhere. It's the kid that comes out of law school and says, I just got out of legal kindergarten. And the kid that comes out of dental school and comes up to you, so I graduated in the top 5 of my class, and I was accepted to this GPR of who gives a shit. That guy never makes it. It's the humble guy who's going to get out there and hustle. And then when he gets to town, he thinks he's dentist and all that. So why would he go to why would he invite the auto mechanic across the street for dinner at his house? Why would he invite the pharmacist when he's a doctor and this guy's just a pharmacist? And it was networking with every one of those businesses. And I literally can say that 30 years ago and today, you can't walk in the zip code of 85044, Awatuki, and go to the owner and say, hey, have you ever heard of Howard Farran? And they'll just crack up loud and say, dude, I've had dinner at his house. I've been to his home. His favorite, and then other things like, so many times when I was leaving the Mexican restaurant Macayo's or leaving Valbenny's, and you see sitting over there is that chiropractor, and he's with her husband or whatever the hell, and you call the waitress over and pick up their tab, and then they're like, I learned that when I got my MBA. When they were talking about that book Influence. Who was the guy who wrote that book?
Robert Cialdini.
Yeah, he taught at ASU where I got my MBA. He's a teacher there,
fantastic.
And he actually lives up the street. And my friend, Dennis friend, all the way from Creighton now, Tom Mattern, his wife knows him well. And but he said, with social animals, if I give you a treat, you're hardwired to give me back a treat. That's why the reciprocity. That's why the insurance guy always wants to take you to lunch. Well, when you invite every single business owner in your city over to your house for dinner, they want to reciprocate. I guarantee you, the next time they ever hear someone say, do you recommend a dentist? They're going to say Howard. And that they don't want to hear that. They want to hear that, well, they'll just put a Facebook ad on. They'll just tweet something on Twitter. Well, I'll just have them like my Facebook page. That's not a relationship. I mean, and look at Facebook. I mean, the average person has 140 friends, but the average funeral is 22 people. So 120 of your friends on Facebook, they won't even go to your damn funeral. How good of a friend is it if he's not even going to go to your funeral? And they want to hide behind a smartphone, an iPhone, and a Facebook page. And I'm old school, dude. I'm 55 years old. I got grandchildren. I say get out and press the flesh, wine and dine, go to lunch with them, have them come to your house, and that's part of being humble. That you can have the guy from what's that auto place? Graylick? Grulix. And you think to yourself, well, why would you have Grulix auto mechanic come to your house for dinner? That dude fixes 450 cars a month. You tell me he's not networked in this community? There are dentists listening to this that aren't going to see 450 patients this month. And anytime that engine light goes on, and your Canadian friends, all the ones that left their car in their garage, guess what they're going to come back to after they left their house in April and come back in October, and that car was in the garage for 6 months? What do you think happened to the gasoline? How much of the water evaporated the gasoline? How many of them you think aren't going to start? How many of them, the list goes on, and how many of them senior citizens need a dentist down here for half a year? How many of them are, guys that your age don't need implants and bridges and partials and dentures? I mean, it's all about networking. You're a social animal. You got to get out. This Mastermind of Millions, that's a great idea. And again, I know guys who have made these $10 million companies, so there's a business in it. And more importantly, to your sacred sovereign profession, dentistry, you need to be pressing the flesh with other doctors and surgeons. I would think all the specialists would want to start one of these up, because their business, instead of coming B2C, their business all coming for dentists. I would think if you're an orthodontist and you started one of these for all the general dentists in your area, that could be a great referral business.
Or if you had a lab, so I got to share a resource, because you and I are on brothers from another mother, I think. So one of the prime ways in which we teach people to build masterminds is something that we call Fill Your Mastermind with Ease, which is WCC, a wine, conversations, and cash event. And it is literally exactly what you have done for years, Howard, which is we specifically target and invite a group of people to our home to find out, number one, what are they working on, what their goals are, what support do they need, and to be able to provide both connections and relationships and resources to one another that are incredibly valuable. And we do those things for free, for the express purpose of building equity in the relationship, creating value, being known, developing intimacy. And for lots of people, you're right. Today's world wants to hide behind the screen and the Facebook likes. But here's how I look at it. And there's actually a 4-stage process, which I think would apply to any business in the universe, but we use it specifically for masterminds. The first of which is to become relevant. To become relevant. The truth of the matter is the world keeps getting noisier and noisier and noisier, and just because of clicking a goddamn like button does not mean you are relevant in any way, shape, or form. But how do you become relevant? That's question number one. Then the next piece is a relationship. Well, it doesn't hurt to invite somebody for dinner. Suddenly you're relevant, you're going to get fed, and now we begin the foundation of a relationship. Now, when we actually get close enough together, we can understand what somebody's working on, what are they trying to build, what are they excited about, how old are your grandkids, all of those pieces. When we begin to understand that, every single step of those brings our influence up. And as we go through relevance, relationship, intimacy, then we get to influence, which is Cialdini's book. And by the way, if you haven't read that, everybody should. Relevancy, so getting the attention. So there's something that's important to me. Then relationship. After we have the relationship, we move that relationship up with intimacy. This is discovering more and more about what somebody's up to, how we can serve and support them, what's vitally significant to their heart, mind, and soul, what they want to create. And then the last one is influence. And most of the time in today's world, and I'm going to pick on people who want to hide behind their computers, is that they confuse a Facebook like for influence. It is not the same. And if you're going to get to influence, then you've got to go through those steps. So that is just a huge component of what we do. And by the way, there's a 22-page manual stepping you exactly through the process of what we call these WCCs. And if they want to go to our Facebook group, they can just get it for free. It's just a complimentary resource. And that's just Mastermind 2 Millions Community on Facebook. Complimentary resource, just download the Fill Your Mastermind with Ease. You can just have it, because every single person, if you are attempting to build a business, should understand those 4 steps and be actively engaged in the process.
You should post that under, so dental has 50 categories: root canals, fillings, crowns. One's practice management, and one of the subforums is called practice manager discussions or ideas to make your practice grow.
Yeah.
But you know what? What I always tell dentists is I know what they're doing. They're listening to me and you, and they're saying, to get accepted into law school, med school, dental school, engineering school, any of that stuff, you're the introvert, shy geek who sat in the library studying calculus and geometry and all that stuff. And they're just saying, they're listening and saying, well, that's just not me. I don't have the personality for it. And then I always say, dude, go Hollywood. These Hollywood actors, they can play a murderer, a love guy, a villain, a good guy. They can. There's so many introverts who, when they get to work, or they're going to their mastermind, or they're calling up the chiropractor across the street who's advertising they're treating migraines and TMG and all that, they just put on a Hollywood actor style, and you can just go. You can just turn into Doc Hollywood. I don't want to say who was what was the Doc Holliday. That was the most famous dentist of all time down here in Tombstone, Arizona, that shot a bunch of people in the OK Corral. So I didn't say Doc.
He was a dentist?
Yeah, he was a dentist from Georgia.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's the most famous dentist in the world. I think he's more famous than G.V. Black or Pierre Fichard. And at Tombstone, it's so cool. But yeah, he was a gangster dentist, and you pretty much did what he said, or he shot you. And I stood in the OK Corral graveyard, and there's like a whole row of bodies that he shot in one gunfight. But don't turn into Doc Holliday. But you can turn into Doc Hollywood. I mean, you can sit there and be the person who wines and dines and networks and drag your spouse with you and get everybody pressing the flesh and all that stuff. And then when it's over, you can go home exhausted and pass out on your couch and read a book with your cat. So just because you're an accountant or an engineer or a scientist or a dentist or a physician or a lawyer, obviously, if you went to school and you were well-rounded and you were in a fraternity and you had a lover and all that stuff, obviously you would have never made the grades to become anybody that's listening right now. So the trade-off was, I mean, me and my friends, I mean, after class, we go to the library, then we go eat at the cafeteria, then we go back to the library, and every single night at Creighton, I'd hear the same thing every single night. Ding. The library will be closing in 10 minutes. And then you'd walk back to the dormitory, and here's all this drunk hedonism, playing, pool and drinking beer and sneaking girls into an all-Catholic male dorm, Swanson Hall. And
Catholics.
Those guys never got into med school. You know what we called them? We called them 4950s because Creighton Dental School would get 5,000 applications, and they'd accept 50. So the 4950 that didn't get in, when we would see them getting drunk the night before the test with some hot babe leaning on him, we'd say, well, it's 4950. I mean, you can either be drunk tonight with a hot babe or you can be a dentist someday. And I got accepted at dental school and med school a year early. That's how nerdy, geeky, stupid I was. So I know.
Smart.
I know my homies are listening. They're saying, I don't have the personality for that. Well, you don't have the personality for Doc Holliday either. You're not a gangster murderer. You're not going to do that. But can you name an introvert movie star to be a good example? Have you ever heard of some movie star that's introvert and shy?
Well, Woody Allen.
Woody Allen, man, that's a strange dude. I don't want to use him as Mike Myers. Ryan told me that Mike Myers is a shy, introvert, quiet guy and just comes alive on the scene. Yeah, Mike Myers. I love his films. He's a funny guy. By the way, I got to tell you, Canada is very different than the United States. I've lectured there. I don't know, 20, 30 times. I love Canada, but in Phoenix, Arizona, they're just nicer. They wave more. They're just nicer, more polite people, and it's so they're so amazing. And I also got one big plug for Canada. It wasn't in Calgary. What was it? It was Winnipeg that had the Human Rights Museum. Did you go to the Human Rights Museum? Winnipeg, last time I lectured in Winnipeg, they just spent $500 million on a Human Rights Museum. And
I've heard of it, but I've not been there.
I went there, and I even taped a podcast from there with a dentist that took me there. And I thought that was the neatest Human Rights Museum because so many of the stories, I mean, you think of human rights, you think of American slavery, American Indian, the Holocaust. Everybody knows those big stories, but there were so many stories. And again, even at a weird level, like the thing that blew my mind the most is after I was born in 1960, there was this girl that every year would run the Boston Marathon, but it was boys only. So here's these 6 fat Boston Irish cops with their belly bouncing, running down the street, trying to chase this little gazelle. Then they'd body tag her. And she would go to jail every year after year after year before finally a bunch of men said, well, why can't women, why can't they run the Boston Marathon? And who was the last country yesterday to just approve women to drive cars?
Yes, I heard.
Saudi Arabia. And it's like, and you think of that, you think, well, what the hell would they not let women drive cars for? Dude, I'm only 55. When I was born, women couldn't run in a Boston Marathon. So the world is it's a race, it's a distribution. There's the first country that lets them drive, and there's got to be a last country, but it's just amazing. And the reason I'm making this point to you is you don't realize, I know you're listening to this, you're under 30, you just don't realize how many thoughts are in your head that are total bullshit. I've always told everyone that the biggest enemy in their life are those demons that live in your head, telling yourself you can't do that. Well, what if I own my own office? I might go bankrupt. Or what if I learn how to swim? I might drown. And you have so many self-limiting beliefs, and it's a mentor. Just think of your favorite coach when you're a little kid. I didn't join any sports. I was too small for football, basketball. The only reason I joined wrestling is because the coach made me. I walked into high school and he said, hey, how much do you weigh? I said, 93. He goes, you're going to join the wrestling team, wrestle 98, because that's the hardest position to fill. I don't have anybody that little. And it starts at this time, and you're going to be there. Here I grew up with 5 girls playing Barbie dolls. I was scared to death. I had to join a wrestling team. I wasn't even smart enough to know I could tell them to go fly a kite. It was the biggest part of my high school life. I mean, all my greatest memories of high school were wrestling, and then I passed that on to my son. All 4 of my boys wrestled from age 5 to 15. They all did it year-round for a decade and are amazing wrestlers. But the point is, you need a mentor. You need someone that says, hey, you're going to start your own practice. Hey, you're going to do this. Hey, you're going to go to Panky, Quay, Spear. You need a mentor, and hell, that you might just make money off your mentor and start a mastermind group. Jay Fiset, thank you so much for taking so much valuable time out of your day to come on my show and talk to my homies. I truly appreciate it.
Howard, I really appreciate you as well. And if I can just echo that one piece for dollars and cents that you'd asked earlier about, which is this. The first time my business broke $1 million in sales, I did it on my own. It took me 15 years. 15 years to break $1 million in sales annually, obviously. That wasn't cumulative. But when I started opening myself up to be coached, the second time, it took about 3 years. The fastest I've done it is 3 months, all with the support of mentors and mastermind groups. And so if any of you are the Lone Ranger out there, for crying out loud, listen to what Howard's saying and find the support that you need, hire the mentor that you need, create the group that you need, because honest to God, you're wasting time and money trying to figure it out on your own. It's been done before. Let people help.
Okay, you got 2 homework assignments. You're going to go under practice management and post some links to this. And number 2, Absolutely. You're going to go next door to the province next to you and see that Human Rights Museum. It'll blow your mind. It's a $500 million museum. Blow your mind.
Yeah. It is on our list for next summer already, as a matter of fact. We do big road trips.
Okay. Thank you so much. I hope you have a rocking hot day.